Hello and welcome to the Aquarist podcast. I'm your host, Randy Reed. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Aquarium Co-Op, the premier online destination for live aquarium plants. With a terrific selection of plants, Aquarium Co-op is sure to have exactly what you're looking for and a whole lot of plants you never knew you needed. From Bacopa, Vallisneria, Scarlet Temple, floating Christmas moss balls, which, if you've never seen before, please go to aquariumcoop.com and check them out. They're awesome and super fun. Aquarium Co-op has Crypt Wendii, Wendedii, or however you pronounce that one, Amazon swords, super awesome coconut bridges covered in lush Christmas moss. And again, that's another one that you should check out if you have no idea what I'm talking about. And really, there's just too many great plants to name them all. And while you're there, be sure to pick up some Easy Green all-in-one liquid fertilizer to ensure your plants are getting all the essential nutrients they need to thrive. Now, on to the interview. Today's date is Friday, May 29th, 2020. My guest today is Matt Needham. Matt has an outstanding resume, having attained a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science, focusing on biological life streams. Matt has also obtained a certification in ichthyology from the Institute of Animal Healthcare in the UK. He's the editor of the Fishkeeper, a South African-based magazine for marine and freshwater aquarists. Matt is also an aquarist at Ushaka SeaWorld in Durban for the past 9 years, where he manages the husbandry and welfare of the fish and marine animals on exhibit. And on top of all those credentials, Matt has been in the hobby for over 25 years, breeding fish and working both the retail and wholesale side of the aquarium trade. So Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I went through that whole bio with only one minor stutter, so that's a good lead into this interview, Matt. Yeah, thank you very much for making the time. This is pretty special because you are all the way in South Africa. You are in Durban, South Africa.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I'm born Devon.
Yeah, very nice. So you would be the first guest, I think. So Frank Amir was from Africa, but he was in the States when we did our interview, and you'd be the first person, I think, doing a live interview with me from the continent of Africa, in the country of South Africa. So two first, man. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's quite nice, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. You know, we had talked a couple days ago just to make sure that the internet connection was there, and it's just a bit of a wonder that somebody in Seattle, Washington, halfway across the world, to somebody in Durban, we can actually have a fairly good connection, a fairly easy time to have an internet conversation. We did have a little bit of a hang up, like a 5-second delay, and you restarted your router, and the C cable didn't get ran over again, so we're down to like a 1-second delay. So I think we're going to be all right.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be fun. Murphy's Law, we were chatting the other day about having a delay and having all the problems, but it's nice to see that we sorted that out.
Yeah, the connection was really, really good a couple days ago, and yeah, we kind of quasi jinxed it there, but you did the restart, and we're all good now. So, what time is it right now? It's 11:10 a.m. Local Pacific time here. What time is it there for you?
It's 11 past 8 in the evening, so that makes it, I think, 9 hours ahead of you.
Yeah, that's good times, man. So thank you very much for making yourself available this evening. So where do we start off with, Matt? Let's just start off with your origin story. Who is Matt Needham in the hobby?
Well, yeah, going back about 25 years ago, I got my first fish tank at the age of 10 from my parents. Obviously, nothing amazing or fantastic. It was just a small 1-foot, if I remember correctly, and a couple of guppies, as everyone mostly gets for their first fish. And that progressed. I think within a month, I had another, what you guys call your, I think it's 40-gallon breeders. We call them 3-foots over here. And yeah, I got that off a friend a couple of months after that. And then it just progressed. By the time I was 16, I had, I think, upwards of 50 tanks. And 18 to 19, probably upwards of 100. We turned our whole garage into a fish room for me, which for my parents to do was, I think, quite amazing. They've always supported me, and I think they're one of the reasons why I have achieved as much as I have in the hobby up to this point.
Yeah, I love hearing the stories about how supportive parents are out there, where they sacrifice a living room, or they sacrifice, well, one is just letting your kid have a fish tank in their room. That's a pretty big move. Letting the kid convert their room into a fish room, letting it spill out into the rest of the house, and then to hear that your parents, gave up their whole garage is pretty cool. I do want to ask. So very early on, you referred to a tank in the length. Description, right? So you called it a 1 footer, and then you said our 40 breeders a 3 footer. So you guys don't really use the gallon designation or liters when you refer to tanks. You just go based off of the long length.
Yeah, that's typically what we use here. So our basic lengths that are, should we say, we normally use your 1 foot, 1.5 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot. That's basically it. Yeah, and then we've never really used liters, although it probably would be better because you guys are getting a good idea as to how much water your tanks will hold, whilst for us, my version of a 3 foot might be different to somebody else's version of a 3 foot. So there's a lot of hit and miss when it comes to that, using those designations. But for the hobby in general here in South Africa, that's basically what we've used for all these years.
Oh wow! So when you walk into one of your local mom and pop fish stores or a big box retailer, when they're advertising a tank, they're saying, "Buy this 1 foot tank." They're not telling you
That
that it's a
yeah,
they're not telling you it's a 10 gallon or whatever.
no, it's
Wow,
basically
that's
1 foot,
awesome.
2 foot. Yeah.
That seems completely backwards as to how you would approach, water volume. And I mean, because then it's, you can't even fall on the old adage of, what is it, 1 inch of fish per gallon is kind of that, antiquated guide for helping somebody. What is it? What does it default to then? Like 1 inch per 1 inch for fish? Like 1 inch of fish equals 1 inch of length for the tank?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not too sure. Like I said, it's so difficult to kind of give a value when you're dealing with just a standard term as a 1 foot or a 2 foot, because, like you're saying, there's no literage to that. So, yeah, you basically have to buy your tank, do your calculation as to work out how many liters it is, and then go from there.
Wow.
I know,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to
yeah,
ask. So then, and so people are probably already, picking up on like the 1 second delay that we have. So you and I have to, play some gymnastics when it comes to handing over talking time, the talking stick, if you will. But I guess we'll go down the rabbit hole of how many different manufacturers supply tanks into South Africa, and are they made domestically, or are they coming in from somewhere else on the continent, or are they coming from another continent? As an example here, Aquarion is, by far one of the largest suppliers of kind of that standard rectangular aquarium with the black rim framed, or black framed rims, I should say, and Marineland, and who's the other one? There's one more, Aquarion. Man, PetSmart sells it. So, but Aquarion is by far dominant. So we've got maybe 3 players that and Aquarium Masters. So 3 to 4 players produce the bulk of our generic, non-aquascaper tanks. So what is that like in South Africa?
to be honest, we don't actually import a lot of tanks. I think the only tanks that do come into our country that are imported are the Aqua Design Amano tanks for their aquascaping. Other than that, we've got a couple of larger pet brands here in South Africa who are wholesale suppliers. Basically, one's called Molton's Pets and another one Quality Pet. Those are the main suppliers that I've seen in our local, should we say, pet shops, fish stores with regards to tanks. And other than that, there's a large amount of individuals that actually produce their own tanks, purchasing glass, building their own, and quite a few that have actually turned it into a business for themselves.
Oh wow, that's really really interesting. So I want to do a quick little Google search here. Who's the dominant tank producer in South Africa?
If I had to say, if you walked into your average, what you guys call mom and pop store, it would be Molton's.
And
Molton's definitely.
is that
M-A-R,
Oh, M-A-R.
M-A-R-L-T
Okay.
O-N-S.
So that's Marltons.
Yeah, that's it. Molton's Pet
Okay.
Products.
Marlton's Pet Products. So I think even with your South African accent, you pronounce things a little bit different. And what we talked about last week was that, we're going to kind of keep track of some of the American Englishisms that maybe I say, and then I'll keep track of some of the South African Englishisms that you guys have, and we'll compare our notes at the end of this and see what kind of funny things our ears are picking up that the other person is saying, just in free speech, just offhand, kind of our jargon, I guess.
No, definitely. Yeah,
All
be
right,
actually quite interesting, I think.
all right, so no, that's birds. I don't want birds. Okay, and so then who are what's for somebody getting into the hobby or somebody already in the hobby in South Africa? What does the retail landscape look like? Mom and pop versus big box, and is it kind of like here in the States where the mom and pops are kind of going away and the big boxes have kind of displaced them with cheaper prices and just more availability? Because you typically find that mom and pops here aren't the best at business, and so they're kind of, competing isn't in their strong suit. So when there's not a ton of people in the hobby, they struggle a little bit more.
Yeah, I think we're on the different side here. We actually don't have a large portion of, should we say, big chain stores. We did have one called Nature's Petland, which you actually don't see around very often anymore. And I came across another one actually not so long ago. It moved into one of our local areas called Pet and Pool. And I was actually chatting with a work colleague today about it. And apparently there's quite a few of them around the country. So they seem to be uh, coming up all over the place. But I don't know if it's the pool side that is actually keeping them going rather than the pet side. Because personally, myself, I find that those stores don't generally tend to have the knowledge that your basic pet shops or fish shops do. So I think for that reason, they actually don't hold very long. Whilst your average pet store tend to do okay, yeah? They sell a variety of stuff. We don't really have any shops purely based on fish. It's hit and miss, maybe the odd one here and there, but they don't tend to last very long. What has been growing lately, and especially in the last 5 to 10 years, is there's been a lot of home aquarists starting up their own shops at home, bringing in fish themselves, and those prices obviously, with bringing in fish themselves, they doing the wholesale themselves and the quarantine, etc. So they're actually able to sell the fish at a cheaper cost in comparison to our larger stores, which I guess has its value, but I think there's a bit of a clash when it comes to certain things there. So yeah.
Yeah, you definitely need, and this is my opinion, I think you do need the convenience factor of a family or an individual on any given day can kind of wander into a pet store and be able to kind of have that discovery, have that experience of, oh wow, those fish look really cool in that aquarium. Oh, you actually sell aquariums here. You sell these kits. You sell these things that are basically ready to go. And that way, hopefully, you get some people into the hobby that way. And of course, we do hope that they're getting healthy fish. We hope that they're getting good information from the store. But yeah, I definitely see the pros and cons of, if that's great that home aquarists are getting into the wholesale slash, retail side of selling fish, but that's not exactly, anywhere near as accessible from a discovery standpoint as just having, like for us at Petco, co-located in a shopping center next to a movie theater, for example. People are going to go into the Petco to kill time before they wait for their movie to start. And I would have to imagine that some small percentage of people get into pet keeping with a betta or something because they, killed time, if you will, in the pet store before going to dinner or the movie or whatever it is that they were originally in that shopping center for.
No, definitely. I think majority of your hobbyists, I know for myself, it's walking into a pet store. You might go in there for getting food for your dog or food for a bird, etc. And the next thing you find yourself browsing down the fish aisle, and we all know as hobbyists and that there's always something that captures you. No matter how many times you can walk into your local pet store, fish store, or whatever, there's always going to be some fish, new fish, or whatever that just captivates you, and you've got to have it. And I don't foresee any fish stores or pet stores here disappearing anytime soon. I think they're an integral part to the hobby. The only difficulty, like you're saying, and I think with the home aquarists, is there's not a lot of them either doing shipping. You guys have a far easier, should we say, shipping method than we have over here. There's not a huge amount of trust built with our couriers when it comes to live animals, and I don't actually think that many of our couriers legally will transport animals for you. So it comes down to having to fly from airport to airport, and obviously that's an extra cost as is. As you'll know with your angelfish that you flew to a friend the other day, those all add up. And what happens is you might buy a fish that's half the price at somebody who's in a different, should we say, city in comparison to you, but the cost of getting it to you might outweigh if you walked into your local shop and bought it anyway. So
that's a good point. And the angelfish that I sent, that was free of charge, so my time and effort, everything that went into raising those angelfish, the only thing that was ever like any money that was actually changed hands was just to compensate me for the 100% pure shipping costs. So there was no, if I was actually trying to do this as a business, I'd have to factor in all of my preparation time of preparing the box and the cost of the heat pack, the cost of, all the materials. And then the fact that it took me, let's just call it an hour and a half of my time to just prepare everything, drive, ship, and all that stuff, and so it's not even factoring that in. It was just 200 straight US dollars just to ship the fish purely is that cost.
Yeah, and that's not exactly cheap, is it?
No, it's not. It's not cheap unless I was selling some gold-plated fish. But the friend and my friend, he really, really liked him, and I was more than happy to do it. So yeah, and sounds like they're doing great, and I hope they continue to thrive, and hopefully he gets some nice spawns out of them. Which I guess to segue back to you and your side of the hobby, at some point you did get into angelfish breeding.
Yeah, that's correct. When I was actually at university, I was well connected with a wholesaler, and he was actually the brother of the guy that owned Moulton's Pet Supplies. And they had Moulton's Pet Supplies and then also a company called Brentwood Fish Hatchery. And his name's Nigel Moulton. He's one of the guys that helped me along with the breeding and the wholesale side of things. And he then opened a pet shop, and I ended up working through his pet shop as well. And he knew how interested I was in the fish. I obviously bred quite a few species up to that point, nothing fantastic. And his supplier at the time had to sell up all her stuff because she wasn't able to do it anymore. So he contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in taking it on. And to be honest, I picked up, I think, 50 to 60 tanks with stands from her and 20 breeding pairs of angels, etc. for, if I think back now, probably about $300, an equivalent to what the exchange rate is at the moment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is actually nothing.
That's fantastic. That seems like that's basically free.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a whole bunch of fry still involved, and these were breeding pairs that she'd actually raised very well and weren't known for consuming their eggs or their fry. So they were doing most of the work for me. But yeah, it was a really big step up from, should we say, like 50 tanks of mostly community stuff, just a variety of African Rift Lake cichlids, South American cichlids, some live bearers, etc. Basically whatever I liked and enjoyed. and stepped up to quite a large scale effort where I was producing a couple of thousand angelfish a month. Yeah, it's the amount of time and effort that goes into that, with having to get up early in the mornings to do your water changes, going to university, coming home, doing your water changes again, and feeding. I think it was one of those things that taught me a lot of discipline, especially in the hobby and the requirements for fish. And for anyone, I think that's getting into the hobby, stepping it up to a breeding level, it's a lot of work. And I don't think a lot of us kind of understand the amount of work that goes into that with regular water changes. And it's not your regular once a week, once every 2 week water change. Those fry tanks, 100 liters, you're doing 50-60% water changes every day to second day. So
yeah, it's I would say it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of consistent work. So it's there's some days recently where having a 1-year-old, having a 3-year-old, there's just sometimes when they go down to bed, it's like, man, I wish I could just sit here and binge watch Netflix. But there's a minimum of 30 minutes every single evening that I need to do in the fish room, and that's really just me skating by, and that's really with me also having the auto water change system where I have to go and harvest my brine shrimp. I have to go and feed each one of these tanks because I'm trying to condition them for breeding, and that's in the discus tank especially, daily vacuuming out the bottoms of these tanks so that they are pristine, and that it's I'm not shooting myself in the foot by having dirty bottom tanks, even though I'm still doing these extra water changes, and sometimes there's supplemental water changes. So sure, that initial 30 minutes of work, or sometimes it goes out to 45 minutes every evening, it's not the worst. It's not a ton of work, but it's every single day I have to do that. And I've really had to instill this discipline in myself that, once my day job is done, and then my second job of being, the dad, and I don't even want to call it a job, but that effort, kids are down to bed, it's you have to go down to the fish room. You can't skip this day because you have, at the very least, you have to harvest brine shrimp, and you have to get that next brine shrimp culture going to keep my my 2 brine shrimp hatcher cycle working, and that I can continue to feed all of the fry that I have that depend on that brine shrimp. And I want good growth rates out of them. I want them to grow fast. I want them to be nice and robust and healthy. So it's not like you can go. It's not just like mowing the lawn once every month, right? It's not that kind of work. It's that work, but it's consistent as well every day.
no, yeah, 100% agree with you. But you know what? When you're doing it as a passion and you really enjoy doing it, it really doesn't make it a hard job. I think we can vouch where a lot of individuals come home, maybe look after their child. Obviously, with both of us having children, we know very well how absorbing they can be with time. But when it's a passion, and that, like, I don't really watch as much TV as a lot of other people. I go down into my fish room. I go spend time with my fish, and that's what I enjoy doing. That's my getaway from a day. Even though I work with fish during the day at work, it's just being in a different environment and being with my own fish at home and seeing the fry I'm raising, reach adulthood and obviously go off to new homes, and that sense of accomplishment of finding new eggs for a species you've really been trying so hard.
Yeah,
there's just no feeling that beats it. It's amazing. It's incredible. And I think that's what keeps the passion going. It's just, there's so much to do in this fish keeping hobby. There's so many new fish to, there's so many pretty things, even if it's just making your tank look better. I personally don't see it as work, and I know for a fact that you don't see it as work. It's just incredible. I think we're so fortunate that we have the accessibility to the fish that we do.
Yeah, there's I'll say every once in a while I will kind of cringe might be too strong of a word, but I'm like, man, I wish I didn't have to go down to the fish room today. But then it's on those days I go down there and there's another clutch of eggs, or a particular guppy that I'm trying to work with has thrown another couple fry or whatever it is. Like there's some creation of life accomplishment that gives you that instant excitement, and it's I can say it's akin to when you actually go hook and reel or hook and line fishing, and you're out there for a couple hours, you're not getting any bite, but the moment you get that one little like hit on your bait, you may not even actually actually hook the fish, but you get that one hit on your bait enough to just send that sensation through the rod, and it's like adrenaline, it's excitement, it's like, oh yeah, this is all worth it, I'm going to keep going, and that gives you that drive for the next few hours you're out there, or for the remainder of your session. So I definitely think that every time you go down there, and if you're doing things right, you're keeping your water clean, you're keeping your fish well fed, you'll get those surprises. They're going to happen, but you don't know when it's going to happen, and every time it does, it's such a cool feeling and such a cool experience.
No, 100%. There's nothing like you're saying with just bringing new life into the world. Seeing those eggs and those fry, and just for me, just raising them up is just it's something special. Yeah.
So starting with going back to kind of your progression as far as like the species that you're keeping. So you start with guppies. That's what gets you hooked. And these guppies, a South American origin fish that has been, colorized and morphed and all that fun stuff, and probably came from a Southeast Asian farm, let's just say. So if that's kind of something that you're starting with, what, how did you progress in terms of what you decided to keep? And I'm really fascinated to know how the fact that you live in Africa, your proximity to the Rift Lakes, even though it's still a good, like, what is it, like a 7-hour flight to get up to any of the Rift Lakes from where you are. So it's not like it's just right around the corner for you, like how that impacts your tastes and preferences and what you keep.
Yeah, it's it's actually quite interesting. I think with the guppies and that's like, I still remember my guppies breeding within the first couple of weeks I got them, and if in all, that was the real Kickstarter for me. Just seeing that new life, I can still to this day remember how excited I was when I got home from school and saw this tank full of fry, only for them to be consumed by my mother and father
Oh no.
the very next day. Yeah, so for a 10-year-old, that's kind of it's disastrous. But it's just something special that just kickstarted my desire and my quest to just find out more about these fish. And look, I did the biggest mistake that every single new aquarist does when it comes to community tanks. I had guppies in there. I had various shark species, big common plecos, corridors, tetras, the lot. And then I found the one fish that kickstarted my real drive towards cichlids was Brashadi, Neolamprologus brashadi, that I found in one of our local shops. There was a pair there, and I just received some money for doing some chores around the home and that. And unfortunately, I could only buy the one. So I bought the one, and just the behavior, like living in its cave and how it was protecting its area, and just all the qualities that the cichlids have, just really piqued my interest in that kind of family of fish particularly. And from that was probably around the age of 13. So from that day on, my interest pushed towards cichlids and went obviously the African route. I did a lot of Malawi cichlids and some Tanganyikans and that. And now, over the years, it's moved more towards the dwarf cichlids, your pistogrammers and checkerboards, etc. That's where my passion has kind of evolved into. And yeah, I've never been to the Rift Lakes. Like I was saying to you the other day, I've been to South America, the Rio Negro, but I've never been to the lakes. But it's obviously something on the bucket list that I've spoken to my wife numerous times about, doing a trip up there. And as you say, it is about 5-7 hours flight for us. So it's not just around the corner, as a lot of people seem to think. You're in Africa, it's right there.
Yeah, and that's almost
Yeah.
kind of having this perception, like if it's almost like a default, like, oh, if you live in Africa, then I would have to assume that if you're an aquarist, you of course have been to all the Rift Lakes and you've collected and all this stuff. But if you were to ask me as an American, oh, have you been to your own Great Lakes and have you experienced what those are and have you been to them, because they are as equally as amazing of a wonder of the world, and I'd say no. It's kind of it's this unfair assumption that I would just apply to you. But, the fact that it is, it is a journey in and of itself, even for you to go 5 to 6 hours. Because even once you do the 5 to 6 hour, like, say, flight, from everything I hear of talking to people, like, it can still be a bit of a journey from those main airports that are closest to it to actually get out to the Rift Lakes.
Yeah, I think so. I don't, especially up in Kenya. Kenya is one of the regions that a lot of individuals tend to fly into if they're going to the lakes. And stunning, it's an absolutely stunning country with a lot of wildlife and fantastic parks, etc. But it's still very rural. There's not, besides the main city, etc. There's still a lot of ruralness out there. There's a lot of dirt roads and long hikes. There's no big freeways, etc. To get to these places within an hour, half an hour. So those dirt roads, you got to get 4x4s or something roadworthy to get there. And a lot of the places are very remote. They're not easily accessible.
So then, if anything, it's more so like, why isn't that it's even more so that it's easier for me to go to the Great Lakes than it is for you to go to your Rift Lakes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you, we've got Kruger National Park in South Africa, which is easy for me to get to. It's probably a 10-hour drive. I've never been there.
Oh,
So yeah, exactly. I think a lot of us can say, like, there's a lot of attractions in our specific countries, and we just haven't got there.
yeah, yeah. And you said that one, Kruger National Park is 10 hours from you.
More or less, yeah. It's Durban's right on the east coast. We're about halfway up the east coast of South Africa, whilst Kruger National Park is on the border of Zimbabwe and Mozambique, right up the top of South Africa. So it's a fair drive. It's about five hours from Durban to Johannesburg, and then another good 4 or 5 hours from Johannesburg up to Kruger National.
Let's do my fun Google Maps flyover. I'm a little disappointed. I should have already had South Africa pulled up. I'm slipping. I'm falling off my game, Matt. Falling off my game. All right, so let's go ahead and zoom in. And while I do this, so what happened? What happened to that fish room? So you go off to college or you're at university and you still had this fish room in the garage, or did it move to another location?
No, it was there. It's always been there, and like I said, the main production was Angelfish. But after my university years, I was at university for 4 years, and I've always been a passionate cricketer. And yeah, so cricket's massive in South Africa. It's one of our main sports, and was something that I played at school. I played out of school, and then I was offered to play professionally overseas in the United Kingdom.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so
Hold on. I'm talking to a pro aquarist and a pro cricket player on this podcast. That is a bonus, everybody. That's awesome.
yeah. Look, I didn't play any provincial county level, but I went over and played for a good couple of clubs over there, and as the professionals, the overseas professional for the clubs. So they'd basically select us, and your agent would send through the info and select you, and then they'd pick you, and you end up going and playing for that club for the whole summer over on that side. So that's what I did for the 3 years afterwards. So in order for me to follow that dream and passion of playing cricket, unfortunately I had to let the fish room go. So I managed to sell a whole bunch of my stuff to some people that I trusted. I'm not too sure where they are now with regards to what I gave them, but yeah, I was still happy that there was people out there that I could share the passion with, and at least the amount of years that I'd spent on setting that up, at least give it to them to hopefully take forward. So I think ultimately that's what we're trying to do in South Africa. Is we're so far removed from the rest of the world that it's kind of upon us as individuals to work really hard together in order to grow our hobby. We don't get the variety of fish species that you guys get overseas, in the States, in Europe, etc. And we don't have the associations, or should we say auctions, where you can actually pick up some really rare stuff. We just don't have that here. And with the Fishkeeper, that's definitely something we're looking forward to, and hopefully getting going in the near future is starting to get an association going here where we actually will meet from time to time. I know somebody's trying to set up a breeders association at the moment where there's going to be a website where individuals will post their name and the species they are known for or the families of fish that they are known for, which just makes it a lot easier for people to find the fish that they are looking for. Because at the moment, for me, my pistogrammers that I've got downstairs, I had to specially order them from Taiwan. There was pretty much nothing in the country, and there's not many breeders of a pistogrammer in the country. So I think I've even got a species down there which is quite common in the hobby, what's called the Rio Mamore, a pistogrammer. As far as I'm aware, I'm one of less than a handful of individuals that have it and have bred it in the country. Yet in Europe and the United States and that, it's pretty common.
Wow. So I'm looking at the map of South Africa. So we've got Pretoria, Durban, Port Elizabeth, Cape Town, and then Bloemfontein. I probably butchered that one, but those appear Bloemfontein. So those appear to be your major cities in the country. Who of those countries has the strongest tropical fish keeping presence?
Pretoria and Johannesburg at the moment, that's where the majority of your wholesalers are. You do have a few in the Cape Town region, but they're not as extensive as up in Johannesburg. Reason being is Johannesburg, OR Tambo Airport is our main hub. That's where a majority of international flights fly into. Cape Town gets a few, but not to the same extent. Durban, yeah, we get, I think we've got one international flight to Heathrow, one to Dubai. That's about it. So for ease of us receiving fish, Johannesburg is the way to go. And through that, a lot of places have established their wholesale brands or their fish houses up that side, just for obviously the transport and the ease of acclimation, etc. Because sending it down to Durban would take probably waiting for another 3-4 hours for it to be cleared through customs. Then you've got to wait till you can get it on another cargo flight. So you're potentially looking at another 8 to 9 hours before you can even get it down to Durban. And as we all know, those fish that have been sent, most of the time they've been in transit for a day or two already. So time is of an essence when it comes down to that.
And so even with your proximity to like Lake Malawi, is it just the demand and the price that an exporter from the lake can get in Europe or in Asia or in the United States? It just far outweighs what they could get for it in South Africa.
I think the demand over in the United States and Europe is far greater. We do have a couple of individuals here in South Africa now that are importing wild caught fish from Lake Tanganyika. It's a very, should we say, niche group of individuals, and obviously with the exchange rates, they're not the cheapest, but you're getting fish in that are close on adult size, if not adult size, so are breeding ready groups, and being wild caught fish, they tend to, our waters here are actually, our pHs are very high. Usually, I know my tap water here in Durban, I measured it the other day, which actually quite shocked me, was 8.2, if I'm correct.
Wow.
Which is, it's very high, and especially for the pistos and that I'm trying to keep. It makes it very difficult with getting it down. So for Rift Lake cichlids, it's perfect. Our hardness is also up there. It's also quite high. So breeding them once they come in at that size is not much of a challenge, because wild caught fish that's what drives them, feed and breed.
What's your local water source for your freshwater, your tap water?
We get our water from the Mgani River, which is our main river that runs through the Durban region.
Is that to the south of you in?
It's right in Durban. The river mouth is in Durban.
Oh,
the actual city.
Umgeni River?
That's it,
okay.
That's it, yeah.
Okay, and then that thing is just high pH, and where's that flowing from? That's flowing from so you've got a dam up above you?
Yeah, we do. It starts obviously in the Drakensberg, and then it goes through about 4 dams on the way down. But the pH of that river is actually is not really high. It's if I'm correct, it's probably in the high sixes.
Okay.
But there's a lot of pollution that sometimes tends to happen along that river, and so that river gets pulled into the water plants, and I think it's from there that the chemicals that they're using, etc. And we have quite a big issue sometimes with chlorine and chloramines. You can get away with doing water changes, let's say 9 out of 10 times straight from the tap. But it's that one time which I had an experience with when I was in my teens where I lost nearly half my fish room.
Oh, geez.
Because it's, also just going through the learning curve, etc., and people having told me and big breeders and etc. that our water was fine, which it was, up until that one day that they obviously dosed quite heavily with chloramines, especially because chlorine you can get out of water very easy by just agitating it. It's the chloramines, etc., that really are the ones to look out for and aren't the easiest to get rid of without some sort of extra chemical added, our dechlorinators and all that kind of binding materials.
Yeah, I really, I take it for granted how fortunate I am that there's a variety of factors working for me in my fish room in terms of my tastes and preferences as well, where I am naturally gravitating towards things that like that neutral or softer water. My water basically is rainwater for the most part. That's, it's like ice melt runoff is what feeds my local water supply. So it's already very soft. It already has very, very low TDS. I already like to keep discus and angels and whatnot. And then on top of that, we don't put any chloramines in my local water supply in terms of where my home is. And I've done so many water changes just straight with tap water. The auto water change system, obviously, since I did it, I have a sediment and a carbon block to pull out any chlorines or chloramines that may happen to be in the system. But, fortunate on the cleanliness of my water, not them having to put any extra additives into it. And then the fact that it's inherently soft, and that does support what I'm working with. That actually does bring up a question where the angels that you must have received then, so they just kind of naturally acclimatized themselves through generations to being just used to your local Durban water then? I assume you weren't playing the water chemistry game?
No, yeah, I think so. Obviously, as you know, like 3 generations, fish actually adapt quite quickly. That's something that I've found over the years. It's actually quite surprising that you don't really have to alter the water as much as you think when it comes to generations further down the line. But we do have our species, obviously, where you've got to play around with. Even with my apistos that I've bred in the past, my apistogramma that I've got downstairs too, I've got my Honsloy, apistogramma Honsloy, and my McMaster I bred at pH of 7.8 and quite a high TDS. The Rio Memores, I had to use quite a lot of RO water to finally get them to go. So they were a little bit more of a challenge when it came to that. But I think the pH eventually there was sitting on 7, but the hardness was a lot less. The water was a lot more soft, which I think had an impact on fertilization. I think the biggest issue I was having there wasn't with the pH of the water, but with how hard it was. And so the eggs were calcifying too quickly and weren't getting enough time for the actual sperm from the male to take root and fertilize them. So yeah, I've never really played, I'll be honest, I've never really played around too much with water chemistry. I've always believed that keeping things standard and consistent, like you were saying earlier, your consistency is very important, and also with really good feeding. Condition your adults well, even raising fry. I don't play any games when it comes to feeding my juveniles, etc., when raising them up, because ultimately I'm going to select my breeding stock or next generation breeding stock through those ones that have birthed or raised. So
Yeah, clean and consistent. That should kind of be the formula for water and for fish. On the note of chasing water parameters, I should look up the bottle right now. But some of these companies that sell like all the the pH modifiers and whatnot, I really wonder if they do put some strong disclaimers on there, like you should be a advanced aquarist before you try and really chase pH or anything of that nature, or if it's just labeled just like anything else in their lineup, sits right next to the water conditioner, and it's, oh yeah, I probably should get some of this pH modifier to go along with my water conditioner. Why not? And that obviously, unless you're really really on your game and you're very experienced, is gonna set you up for failure as opposed to setting you up for success.
yeah, no, totally. I think that's one of the things that a lot of newer aquarists or new hobbyists coming into the hobby do is I've seen a lot of them trying to chase the best parameters that they possibly can according to information that they've received on the web, etc. And I think that's where a lot of guys need to be careful is, we're very fortunate enough that we've got technology and we have access to lots of valuable information, but there's also a lot of incorrect information on there. And like you're saying, with these conditioners and buffers, etc., when you start chasing those parameters so much, like you said, you are doomed for failure. If you're trying to drop your pH too low, you might get to the point where that pH, you go to bed one night, you come back in the morning, and the next thing your pH is sitting at 2, 3, and your fish are dead. Because it's reached that point where it just isn't buffering anymore and it just crashes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's why it's one of the things that I know a lot of the guys that I chat to in the groups that I'm on is just, don't fiddle too much. Like if your fish are happy, they'll breed, and if they're feeding, they're happy. So yeah, it's just there's obviously when it comes to the more difficult species, but like those more difficult species that we go out there and breed, they're not always done by new hobbyists. It's usually the guys that are quite experienced and have been in the industry for like a long time, etc. Those are the guys it's the challenge of going and accepting, like going after those goals, but they've learned through trial and error over the years as to what works and what doesn't work. And if you are going to change your water chemistry or chase parameters, etc., do it slowly. It's not going to happen in a day or two.
Let's go
these
down
kind of things.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say let's take your actual experience with your Rio Memore. I think you said epistogrammas that you ended up utilizing RO to bring that water pH to bring the pH down to trigger breeding. What was that process to how long did you try them in your normal tap water, and then when did you start phasing in the RO, and then when did you eventually see the results of like, oh yeah, it actually was that they needed softer water?
Okay, so I received that shipment, if I'm correct. I got the Hansloy and the Rio Memorial at the same time. I think it was end of November last year. And I used straight tap water out the tap. That's what I acclimated them to, and went off on a start like that. Within, I think, 2-3 weeks, the Hansloy bred, but not a big clutch. And I think I ended up now with about 12 individuals, all being male as well.
All of them are male?
Every single one.
Oh, theories, maybe temperature or?
Yeah, the temperature in my fish room, I actually don't run any of my tanks on heaters. The temperature in the room gets up to about 28, 29 degrees centigrade in summertime, like the peak of summer, which I found with the thermometers I've got in the tank tends to keep the tanks at about 27 degrees.
So that's like 80, that's like 80, 82 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I think it's about 82, 84 around there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the research I have done with those is there is a bit of temperature involved when it comes to a stage in their life. I'm not too sure what stage of life it is. It's during the early stages of fry development that those sexes are determined. It is something that I'm going to be playing with in the next clutch because it's winter now and I'm having to run a heater in there to keep it up. So the tanks are actually running at a cooler temperature now. But with the Rio Memorial, I probably kept that going until I think about January, end of January, at which point they bred. I had seen eggs in the tank with the female, but those eggs vanished within a day or two. So I suspect that they were eaten, and they didn't really have that nice ripe, like red color that you would expect with epistogramma eggs when they're fertilized. So a week after that, when I started doing my water changes, I do about a 30% water change every week on those tanks. From then, I started filling with RO water. So I would work it out. I'd probably throw in, let's say, 20, if it's a 30-liter tank. So 10 liters would come out. I'd throw in 8 liters of RO water and then 2 liters of normal tap water, just to kind of keep that buffering mineral level up. This I then did over the course until March. I think it was end of March, April. Hadn't seen any eggs again. I was actually doing a bit of maintenance on the tank. I removed one of the pots to replace with a different breeding cone, and yeah, there was fry on the bottom of the tank, so little wrigglers. And at clutch size now, they about a centimeter now, and there's about, the last I counted, about 35 or 40 of them.
Nice.
So the comparison of clutch size with the Hansloy is like 3 times, and I think that does come down to the RO water and obviously how hard my tap water was. And like I was saying earlier, with the eggs not having the ability to get fertilized properly before they calcify. So yeah, I think definitely has a role with species, soft water species, such as your pistos, your tetras, all those South American species. I think the eggs still, it doesn't matter how many generations have been bred through farms, etc., but those eggs still require something similar to their natural environment in order to really do well, should we say.
So let's relate that to the angels then. Do you think the angels could have had an even higher yield if you're using an RO, or do you think those guys are so far removed that maybe they might be a different case?
I think it's difficult to say, because angels have been bred so extensively over the years and all the farms. It's one of the fish that I think
maybe
we can
they
all
have
say
changed.
has been, yeah, I think speciation does occur, and things do change in genetics of individuals. It's the same thing, like how do we get the different varieties of angels? How do we get the different varieties of rams and all that? There's those small genetic changes that occur. And I think, though, that if you did do the eggs in soft water, you probably would have a better yield. I could very well have had a better yield, but it was something at the time that, should I say, I wasn't really in trial and error. I had 20 pairs that I was breeding. They, as is, were putting out. I think I was getting 100.
You were already feasting, so why? No need to increase the yield when you've already got more than you can handle, kind of thing.
No, that's exactly it. Because I could have gone from 100 to 300 to 400 or more. I don't know, but that's what I could handle at the time. And like I said, I wasn't educated very much. I've learned a lot more about water parameters and pH levels, and especially soft water versus hard water when it comes to certain species, and just the impact it has on the well-being of the animals depending on where they're from. I think it's always nice to know where your fish come from ultimately too. I think the Far East farms, I know they pump a lot of water from their own rivers to the breeding farms, and that's why they're able to produce what they do. So I would expect that water is at a bit of a softer, or the pH should be 6s, if not a bit less, and should be quite soft with their environment, with the tropical environment too. So
I'm curious to know then, for future fish room activity for you for keeping with these epistogrammas. Are you going to start introducing some softer water for the Hongzoi to see if you can get a bigger yield on subsequent batches? And then what direction are you going to go to play with the gender formation of the fry? Are you going to go hotter or are you going to go cooler?
The Hongzoi, I've already started at that. I've put my male and my female back a couple of times, but he's a bit of a bully when it comes to, I find they're actually quite an aggressive pistogramma species in comparison to the other two I have. And the others that I've actually had over the year. I've also done agassiz, cockatoides, and the steel blue, SP steel blue. And the Hongzoi they just seem to be a lot more aggressive in comparison to the others when it comes down to that. But I've definitely been playing with the Oro water already. I think that's the beautiful thing about science and getting to play around, etc. But temperature-wise, definitely, I think for my tanks, when I do have fry, I'm going to start playing around by placing some heaters into specific tanks, and I think go cooler. I think 25 degrees might be the prime temperature. If 27, I'm getting all males. My Rio Mamore, they actually at about 23, 24 at the moment. So that will give me, I think, a good idea as to when they come out and I'm able to sex them, will give me a good idea as to what the mid-range might be with regards to sex. So,
okay, so you're going. So for me, in Fahrenheit, it's going to be you're testing out somewhere in like the low 70s, like 72, 73, 74 is kind of what you're going to try to see if you can produce females, right?
Yeah, I definitely think, like I said, I've got the males and I know what the temperature was. I've got a log and I keep a log as to when my animals spawn, when my fish spawn, what the temperature might be. A couple of weeks through that, I monitor the temperature as well. I've got a thermometer in the room to measure the temperature of the room. It's also, it's just my science background. Like also with that science background, it just fascinates me to the extent as to playing around with small things here and there as to what outcomes might be. I know it's done in the Far East. I know the guys play around over there. It's the reason why I think we get a lot more males in epistogramma over here in South Africa, especially when you go to your local fish store. Then females, you don't see a lot of females around. And if you do see females, they often sold as a pair for quite a substantial amount more than just the male. So yeah, it's just interesting to play around, I think, and find that niche because, like I said, we don't have many of that family of fish here in South Africa at the moment. It's one of the species one of the families that there's a lot of demand for, and people want because they're attractive. They're not too boisterous when it comes to cichlids, and you're able to keep them in small community tanks. Not everyone has the ability to keep these large cichlid species, etc. Even angelfish. Angelfish grow to quite a large size.
Yeah, for sure.
And they'll eat your smaller fish after a while. There's numerous stories of cardinals and neons going missing from angelfish tanks. So it's definitely something I want to work towards. It's like I said, a passion of mine is the smaller dwarf cichlids, and to bring them out into the South African hobby and make them a lot more readily available for hobbyists in general, I think is ultimately one of my drives that I have here at the moment.
What does the planted aquarium scene look like? Because epistogrammas are such a fantastic fish for all the reasons that you said, and the fact that it is a cichlid that has that cichlid behavior, amazing coloration, and they can go in a planted tank and not uproot everything.
No, exactly. Planted tanks, they kind of, it hits and miss as to them at the moment. We had Aqua Designer Mano come into the country not too long ago. I think within 5 to 10 years, if not less. And there's a company up in Joburg that is working quite closely with them and getting their stuff in. And there's definitely an increase in people with their aquascaping, but more for just display purposes and just something pretty to look at in their homes. And I haven't really seen many people too driven fish-wise to those aquascape plants. they haven't kind of built or scaped the tank to a certain point for a specific fish, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like they've scaped the tank to what they want to have.
Right. So
and then
if we
introduced due to that.
if we rolled into one of your stores that sells live aquatic plants, are we going to see a good selection, or are we going to see like Amazon swords and some a very basic limited selection of plants if somebody were to actually want to set up a plant at aquarium?
To be honest, I haven't really ever seen a very large selection. A lot of your more common species, like you're saying, your Amazon swords, Vallis, your jungle val, your Anubias species, Java fern, your more common hardy stuff. Java fern and the Anubias species tend to kind of take the biggest limelight when it comes to planted species here in South Africa. But we do get a few others, but not to the same extent that, if I had to watch one of Corey's videos on, your guys and the shop and what you guys keeping in the, should we say, in the warehouse, etc., is not nearly to that extent. Like, you can't walk into a pet store and find one of your basic mosses that, you guys got your Christmas moss and all that kind of thing. You can't find that here. You struggle. Even Java moss, you struggle to find that anywhere. You've got to get that from pretty much home breeders that have it in their tanks and just have excess, etc. So it's definitely, I think it's something that we need to look at, and hopefully with the whole aquascaping thing, getting a bit more limelight. I know I've jumped on board as a co-sponsor for Aqua Design Motto with the magazine. So I've got their international layout competition in the magazine. I've got an article by them, which is actually in most of the magazines, just to try and promote it in the country. It's there's an amazing a lot of stuff that can be done with planted tanks. They're amazing to look at. They're just so good for certain species of fish, and I would definitely love to see them more. I know for me personally, it's something that I've spoken to the wife about doing a really large, should we say 6-foot tank, so 1.8 meter tank in our living room with heavily planted, but with a theme, and then filling it with some really beautiful species of fish.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and we need to segue and give the Fishkeeper some love. So we're definitely like approaching that 1 hour mark, and we've you've given me a couple opportunities to segue into it, but I definitely one of the things of having you come on is to talk about what you're basically the representative for tropical fish keeping in South Africa, so there's a lot of weight on your shoulder, Matt, that you're but on the note of just the Fishkeeper, how did you come into that? What is the Fishkeeper, and how can people learn more about it?
Yeah, basically the Fishkeeper started, we're in the 11th volume now, so it's been going for about 11 years, since about 2009, and originally it started through a friend of mine, Rolf Dennison, who owns a company called Dennison Publishing, and when his mom passed away a number of years ago, he took over a birding magazine here in South Africa called A.V. Zandra, and the publishing company that was started by her. So through that, his actual passion has always been reptiles, and he started a reptile magazine called Ultimate Exotics, and through that, he actually started introducing a small A5 version, which was, I think, about 15 or 20 pages to start with, of the Fishkeeper into that magazine as like a freebie. And there was a huge amount of interest in it, and eventually it moved to a proper A4 publication. And Rolf kept this going up until last year, July. He approached me last year, July, with regards to if I would like to take the Fishkeeper over from him, for reasons that his reptile company has just got absolutely massive, and he has having to put so much time and effort into it that he wasn't able to put the time and effort into the Fishkeeper magazine anymore. And being his second passion in comparison to the reptiles. I'd contributed to the magazine over the years, and we actually went to school together. So, I was the first person he actually approached in July last year and asked if I would like to take the magazine over from September last year, as in fully produce it, edit it, which I all do myself. The magazine, I produce 100% myself. I have no help from anyone. But I love it, and it's an absolute brilliant tool to have. There's a lot of information, wealth of information that hobbyists can get from it. It's easily accessible. We actually have an app, the Fishkeeper, which you can find on Google Play Store or this Apple iStore, or whatever their version is. And it's also in Pocket Mags, where it's available on a subscription level or to buy magazine by magazine. But the subscription level, if you're really wanting to get in and have a look, subscription level is probably definitely the way to go. Currently, I think it's 50% off the main price if you go subscription route. So yeah, you're basically getting 2 magazines then for the price of 1.
What does that convert to for our U.S. listeners? Because one, you had told me that a surprisingly large number of people that subscribe to this are actually in the U.S., right?
Correct. At the current moment, I think we've got about 100 and something subscribers over in the US, which I actually was quite shocked at. I've got a company over in the UK that builds the app for me and maintains the app. And I asked them the other day, just before we chatted, as to where my obviously the subscribers were from. And I was actually quite surprised to find that vast majority were actually from the States, followed by Canada and Europe, a good portion, and with a good handful, or more than a handful from East Asia side. So I think it's something that we needed in the country. There's been numerous attempts at a fishkeeping magazine over the years in South Africa, and unfortunately, it's never really had the backing. And Rolf really did a fantastic job, I think, at getting this to the level it was at. And unfortunately, with exchange rates and economy here at the moment, you've had a good number of advertisers pull out from the South African market. So the magazine has been, should we say, putting me out of pocket. But you know what? I'm not too ultimately phased about that. I know that the time will come and it will grow, and you just got to stick to these things. And I'm actually just in it for the passion to be able to provide individuals with knowledge on there. You can access it on your phone and some really interesting information. We've been very fortunate that, like I said, Aqua Design and Mana, they've come on board, so they're providing us with valuable articles. Dr. Gerald Baslier from Germany, he's come on board. He's providing some really good articles on fish health, which is a new section that we've started. I've got a couple of very good breeders here in South Africa that we've spoken about articles. But yeah, it's in order for us to grow, and that's the whole key, is to be able to give the best experience that we possibly can, to readers, and that pictures cost money, and obviously articles from really world-renowned individuals cost money too. But we'll get there, and I think that's the whole thing, is growing the hobby and just getting the name out there, and hopefully more and more people will support the magazine, and through that we'll be able to provide the experience that the readers want. And I've had very good reviews about it. So there's a lot of people that really enjoy the read, and they ask you every single month as to when it's coming out, or bi-monthly. It comes out every second month. But we're very excited as to where it's gone, and ultimately I want to thank you for allowing me to come onto your podcast and talk about it and just let people know about it. there's not many fish magazines out there in the world. I think there's so yeah, we're one of a kind. But being in South Africa is cool. But ultimately, I want to make it. I think the goal is to be a bit more international when it comes to the magazine and reach a lot more individuals. We don't have a printed version. We've only got a digital version though. Reason being is through my environmental side, and I get asked this a lot. But we were printing a version, but a lot of the magazines weren't reaching their destinations, and we were also sitting with a lot of magazines at home due to the fact that you've got to print a certain number. So being involved with environmental science and a big call on climate control and all that kind of thing, it just didn't seem the right idea to keep printing it and wasting paper. So we've gone the fully green digital version when it comes to the magazine.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking in the digital context now, but I'm a huge proponent of, written word, whether it's actually printed or in a digital format. But I think that there's something very, very special about a scheduled release of a publication or somebody producing a written work in the form of a book. And the fact that this is obviously in our hobby is, just awesome. I'm going through your sample, one of your free magazines on here that people can check out. I think it's the June issue 2019, and it's 45 pages, full color, amazing pictures. I mean, the content. So let's see here, breeding the cardinal tetra. This is, chock full of pictures. I think it's going to span, what is this, like 3-4 page article on just breeding the cardinal tetra alone, and then of course you're also mixed with saltwater. But there is a ton of information in this, and for anybody that is already subscribing to like an Amazonas or a tropical fish magazine or tropical fish hobbyist, the fact that you are making this available to people basically anywhere in the world that has the free internet access, and free meaning like not controlled in some way that this would somehow show up as a blocked site for them. I would highly encourage you. It's going to come out once every 2 months, and I would say it's probably a nominal subscription fee to be subscribed to this magazine. And it looks awesome. I'm always looking for the next, like, what is the next publication? What's the next Fish Club news article or magazine that I can subscribe to and get in my email, just so I can see what's going on in the hobby, just so I can get more information on different species, different plants, like whatever it is. And then the really, really novel thing about, subscribing to a magazine in a different country is that now I get to see all of the companies that do business in South Africa, or at least the ones that are choosing to advertise. So I see Tetra has got several advertisements in here, so that lets me know, oh, Tetra must be pretty popular over there, or they must be a big player. And then, who some of the other people that do business in the fish space, like what products are available to a South African hobbyist that I might not have, or that I also have in the States. And I think that's just a really fun, novel aspect of as well of getting a publication from somewhere else. And of course, if you're an English speaker, this is fully in English, so right up our alley.
No, definitely. Saying that on the free download, the June last year, if people actually go onto our website, which is www.thefishkeeper.co.za, if you go into the magazine tab at the top and down to latest issues, we've made from June last year, 2019, through to, I think it was, when was it? March, April. Yeah, through to March, April this year. We've actually made them freely accessible there as a download for individuals. So if anyone wants to go have a look, you're more than welcome to go on there and download the PDF copy. On that, obviously on the app and pocket mags, etc., they are at a cost. If I remember correctly, it's $2.99. Yeah, if I remember correctly, it's that. But like I said, if you subscribe, it works out to half that amount. I know for us in South Africa at the moment, the guys, if they go onto the app, because of the exchange rate, the conversion works out to something like 60 something rand for the magazine once off. But if they buy a subscription, it works out to 30 rand. So it's half price already. So it's a big saving when it comes down to that. Like I said, you're basically getting 2 magazines for the price of one with a subscription. So you're saving half your money.
Yeah, and for something of this caliber, I mean, this is not like a high school, weekly publication put out there, or anything of a novice such as myself. If I were to start slapping together some content in a digital print form like this looks legit, and it looks like it would just be on the shelf at our Barnes and Nobles, our big bookstore that has the large magazine selection. It looks like it would be on the shelf with any of that stuff, with any of the other magazines out there that are professionally published.
I appreciate that, Randy. It's it's some very kind words.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
so now the next move that I want to see is I want to see this thing grow and blow up such that you actually have a separate magazine for freshwater than a separate magazine for saltwater. I feel like that's where, like, Tropical Fish magazine as well. They combine it. I'm not sure what Practical Fishkeeper does in the UK, but I really want to start seeing the magazines get separated. Now again, I completely understand why you would have yours together, but I would love to see you get so busy and so popular that you're able to support having two separate distinct magazines.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think practical fish keeping and tropical fish hobbyists at the moment, they both also incorporate freshwater and marine. I'm not too sure. I do read through both. I do subscribe to both as well. It's yeah, like I said, being a hobbyist and it's my passion. I read as much as I can. But from what I've seen, is they tend to be a little bit more pro one over the other. I could be wrong. That's just the reading I've gone, but a lot of wealth of information also covered in those magazines. They're fantastic, and they've been around for years.
I think, yeah,
Um,
I think TFH. I would say that I'm subscribed to that one, and I would say that that does lean towards freshwater. But part of me is like, I'm pretty sure that they used to have a freshwater only, and then they ended up combining the freshwater and marine just because of declining in subscriptions. Is I want to say that's the story behind that, but to me that would just signal a resurgence in the hobby to the point where like an Amazonas magazine steps in and they're able to produce a full, bi-monthly freshwater only publication where if, your magazine and TFH and these other publications were like, man, we're getting so much demand for both sides of the hobby that we actually can support two separate releases on that bi-monthly basis.
no, definitely, and I think it's one of those things that I kind of promote all the time. Is readers must get hold of us. If readers want to see more of something within the magazine, tell me. Tell me what you want to see, what you want to read, because ultimately I'm supplying what each 2 months, what I feel and like quality information that I've come across, or individuals have punted to me with regards to what they feel they want to write on and whether I think it's going to fit, the current timeline of what we're going through. But I've got, like you said, the magazine's it's between 40 and 45, 46 pages. That's what I aim for. Uh, I, I want to do more. Hopefully, I'm going to have a lot more time when the light year is a little bit older and not taking up as much of my time and nights. But yeah, I want to grow that magazine, and I want to grow it up to the same levels of, like, giving a 90 to 100 page publication. And yeah, that's also gonna, the pages need to be filled with articles, advertising. There's a lot more advertising space that I have in my magazine. A lot of there's not that much advertising when it comes down to it. So there's always space for that. If people want to put advertising in, then they can speak to me. And yeah, it's just I'm just, Randy, I'm just happy where it is, man. To be able to have the privilege of being able to produce a magazine, first of all, and contribute back to the hobby like that, that's just an achievement on its own, and just a blessing, I think.
Well, I'd like to see you blow up and just do, huge things with the magazine. So I wish you all the success. And is it opening up Pandora's box if we say, hey, anybody listening to this that contributes to magazines or wants to contribute a written article, is it okay to say reach out to you with some suggestions or like an idea for, hey, I could write on this subject. Would you be interested in this?
No, 100%. I'm always open. I get a good couple of emails every week in my inbox from guys that have just pretty much stumbled across the webpage and got hold of me that way through the inquiry form. And asking, if they've got an idea for this, what I feel, or they sell photos, etc. But just like I was saying at the time, the magazine at this time it still puts me a little out of pocket. So, but I can always work with people. I've got no problem with supporting and helping out individuals, and we'll work something out. When it comes down to supplying something for a magazine, I'll definitely work something out with individuals involved. Yeah, 100%.
Nice. And so somebody could reach you at editor at thefishkeeper.co.za, or Z as an Australian or a South African would say.
That's it. Yeah, that's my email. Yeah.
And we'll make sure that we have links in the show notes to the Fishkeepers Facebook page, the Fishkeepers website, and hopefully, I hope you get a good little bump of subscribers, of people that are discovering you and hearing you for the first time and are like, man, that Matt guy sounds all right, and let me check out this magazine, and they see that this is actually like a legit publication.
No, really, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Of course, Matt. It's probably like midnight now. We've been talking for so long, but I definitely appreciate you coming on, and it's been fantastic. And there's so much more that you and we initially talked about that could be subjects of discussion. So I think in a couple months we'll have to retouch base and hope that your internet C cable stays nice and intact, and we can have a great around the world conversation.
No, definitely, yeah. I think that would be great to just catch up and see what things are happening, see what's happening in each fish rooms, and you guys must also try to get out here. There's some places we can actually go, try look for some fish. We still have some wild species around here, so it's not only South America that you guys have to go catch some fish.
Oh, nice! Some actual native South American or South African freshwater fish that are kind of in your relative area.
Relative or a couple of hours up north. We do get the bluefin notho up north. A couple of smaller species of mouth-breeding cichlids. A good couple of killies. Some other nothobranchius. We've got our own little also family of barb species, local barb species. Not as common anymore due to bass and trout in our systems, but look, we've got quite a few river systems around, and if you actually go and look, and you look hard enough, you'd be surprised at what you can find.
Hey, as long as you show me bodies of water that don't have crocodiles in them, that is, you guys have some big crocs in Africa.
I'll be honest, I actually can't promise you that. But we'll try our best.
Oh, man. All right, Matt, well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thanks so much, Randy. I appreciate it, man.